Now, late last week, the Salvation Army released their State of the Nation 2024 report. Now in its 17th year of the report, it shows ongoing deepening pressures on individuals and families across Aotearoa. To talk to the report today, Ana Ika, social policy analyst and report author for 2024's report from the Salvation Army, joins us on the program. Morena, Ana, welcome. Tell us about the theme of this year's report.
The theme for the State of the Nation is called Ngā Tukunga Iho, or translated, the things we inherit. Ideally, we wanted to release this report as a benchmark for our new government to be able to highlight the areas that have improved, but also those that have not improved that we can work together on. I guess the basis is that our government now can't take credit for the achievements in this report, but neither can they take the blame for the things that have continually declined in the past year. And so Ngā Tukunga Iho, the things we inherit, I guess is a call to the government to highlight that they've inherited the good and the bad, and what are they going to do with it. And so I guess that's the theme of our report this year.
Awesome. Okay, so let's start off with just looking to the report. We'll go through what we can in the time that we've got. Looking to Māori wellbeing, what did you guys discover there?
Yeah, we've got the Māori wellbeing chapter highlights, I guess, the outcomes, but also the disparities between tangata whenua and the rest of the country. So we would classify them as non-Māori. And in that report, we highlight whether outcomes have improved or declined, but also whether the disparity or the differences between Māori and everyone else has improved. I guess the notion there is to, just because an outcome has gotten better for Māori doesn't necessarily mean that the disparity has declined. Like, for example, if we're looking at income distribution for Māori, income has increased in the past year, but the disparity between Māori and non-Māori, there's still a significant disparity there. So I guess that the aim of that chapter is to be able to highlight what can we do to be able to improve outcomes, but also to close those disparities. I mean, one of the areas that we highlight in this chapter is around the kura kaupapa or te reo Māori predominant schools, where when you're looking at Māori rangatahi in those schools compared to mainstream schools, they both perform at the same levels, where if you're looking at rangatahi Māori in mainstream state schools, they're significantly performing at lower levels. And so it highlights there that something's working in the kuras, and how do we replicate that, or how do we implement that in state schools so that all rangatahi Māori can thrive. And so that's one of the things that we've highlighted in that chapter.
Yeah, I mean, that's great to know that, isn't it? That's really powerful to see. Where you say our young Māori people are performing well in terms of NCA and those kind of things. Let's look into children and youth. I understand there's been some reduction in child poverty.
Yeah, so in 2018, the government then had brought about child poverty measures so that we could track how well or how bad we're doing in regards to providing for the least, which is our tamariki in New Zealand. And so based on those measurements, comparing the previous year 2022, or the previous year data, which is 2022, with 2018, there's been significant declines in those measures. And so that's really good news to be able to see that. However, we're kind of like the doom and gloom unit, Lizzie. We often follow up bad news with good news when we dig deeper into those numbers, when we're looking at like material hardship. So these are children that don't have access to nutritious foods, clothing, would often have to go without a dentist or a doctor's appointment. There's a significant disparity there when we're looking at children that are impacted by disabilities and Māori and Pasifika children. And so those are some significant concerns. And like I highlighted with the kura kaupapas, is that there needs to be alternative approaches, targeted approaches to be able to close that disparity or reduce child poverty for all communities, as opposed to just looking at as an overview. And so overall, it's good news, but still significant work that needs to be done in that area.
Yeah, I see in that area you've also reported a decline in both the number of suicides among young people under 25 years of age, and also high mental distress. As you point out, they're still too high, but it's encouraging that they're heading in a better direction.
Yeah, and for those particular stats that we measure, those have declined significantly in the past decade. I mean, New Zealand had we had one of the highest teenage pregnancy rates in the OECD, as well as with youth suicide. And so the fact that those numbers are gradually coming down and have consistently come down shows that there's an improvement that's happening in the youth sector to be able to bring about those results.
Now let's look at crime and punishment. Tell us something about what's happening there.
Yeah, I mean, this is not so. I don't think our findings on this report were surprising to everyone, but crime has significantly increased in the past year. And this is not just crime reported by the police, but that we look at the New Zealand Crime Victim Survey, which is, I guess, the most accurate form of crime experience in the community, because only a fifth of crime is actually reported to police. And so on the police front and also on the NZCVS front, crime has significantly increased. I mean, one thing that we do highlight from the crime victim survey is that half of the offences that were experienced in the past year were experienced by a small proportion of the population. And so that shows that there's a small proportion of our population that are being highly victimized, and it's often around interpersonal violence or family violence. And so looking at how do we support those whānau and those communities, because the reality is those who are highly victimized by crime often don't go to the police or often don't go to the justice sector for support. So if we don't know that it's there, then it poses challenges as to whether how do we provide support for them if they're not coming to the justice system. So there needs to be greater work done there to communities that are highly victimized.
Yeah, and do you think like an awareness and an education for them that they can reach out for help?
Yeah, I think it's both awareness, but also I think it's alternative approaches by the justice system to be able to reach those families, because often families that go through the justice system consistently often lose trust, and so they find alternative ways, and then sometimes they don't even go through the justice way anyway. So yeah, it's about raising awareness that there is support there, but also targeting that support in a way that mana enhances those families that are impacted by crime consistently.
Sure. Now, probably the last thing we've got time for today is we can talk about social hazards. It's encouraging to see that there's been a reduction in alcohol and drug consumption. Can you talk to that, Anna?
Yeah, so hazardous drinking has declined. I think our country, and because the Salvation Army is on the coalface when it comes to addictions,
Sure.
I think that's really welcoming that hazardous drinking has declined. And so I think there's a lot more work that needs to be done there in regards to affordability and accessibility of alcohol in our communities, because that's often the underlying issue for issues like family violence, for assaults. And so when you're looking at where a lot of family violence and assaults are happening, they're often in communities that have a high exposure to alcohol advertising, have a lot of bottle stores, and so there's still a lot more work that needs to be done there. But the fact that hazardous drinking has declined in the past year has declined is an improvement. And also with illicit drug use has declined in the past year, except for cocaine. Other drugs that we look at, like cannabis, methamphetamine, and MDMA, those have all declined. But again, need to highlight that it's about $1.7 billion that's created in social harm from illicit drug users annually. I mean, if you think about it, only about 15% of New Zealanders would use illicit drugs.
Okay.
And so that's such a small portion of the population, and yet that's a significant amount of social harm that's created.
Hey, Anna, great to chat with you again. For listeners, I mean, this is a big report and you've got the time. It's well worth spending a bit of time reading it. And the Salvation Army has it on their website, salvationarmy.org.nz, salvationarmy.org.nz, State of the Nation 2024 report. Ana Ika, thank you so much for your time today.
Cool. Thanks, Lizzie.
Thank you for watching. Hope you enjoyed it. Don't forget to click on like, subscribe, and notifications. See you next time.